I'm here with Sahil Anand, who is the founder and managing partner of Cedar-IBSi Capital, and we're talking in the wake of two Cedar-IBSi events in one day. A half-day conference on building a future-ready bank and the 6th Global FinTech Innovation Awards. Let's just talk about the awards briefly. Your overall impressions of the state of the industry from what we saw in the awards?
From what we saw in the awards, I think something I've been repeating at a few of our events recently is that banks are looking for new fintechs as opposed to the larger players that they've been buying solutions from. And so there is an emergence of new logos and new names that we hear of less frequently that show up at every award. And it's a lot of new people, and that's very exciting. So the ecosystem is growing, the size of the pie is growing, and a very legacy industry or a traditional industry is being in a way disrupted by new age players that can do the same task.
Which leads me handily on to talking about the sessions that you actually chaired in the conference Building a Future Ready Bank. Because that's what you've just been talking about at one level with the new players that you mentioned coming into the industry. Those new players obviously need funding. You had a panel session representing Cedar-IBSi Capital, yourself with your colleague Sumit Sarao, and 3 other venture capitalists in this space.
It was fun. It was fun to have 3 other VC funds. If you look, it isn't typical to have other VC funds on a VC fund panel because typically you compete for the same deals. But I think how we are being viewed in the ecosystem is that we bring knowledge beyond their capital, and so I think other VC funds are happy to partner with us. I think my panel was interesting because what was interesting is that none of the VC funds that they were leading, Indian VC funds, had a bias to B2B or B2C. We are more biased to B2B because of our fund thesis. But as I expected, everybody looks at artificial intelligence cautiously, especially when you invest in these companies, right? So really understanding what an AI company is versus what somebody who's just calling themselves an AI company is. So I think that was one big insight. I think B2B, B2C being the same in terms of interest level was the other insight. And so that was great. And then I obviously had the second panel with the second fireside chat with Felipe, which was fun.
That's Felipe Martinez of Revolut Bank you're talking about there.
Felipe Martinez of Revolut Bank, who's just announced plans to enter India, who's also now valued at $45 billion, who's also one of the global, maybe 10 digital-only banks. And that was interesting because we spoke on talent acquisition for digital banks, we spoke about technology, we spoke about products, and so on and so forth.
If you were an Indian bank and you heard that Revolut was coming, would you be looking over your shoulder?
If I was an Indian bank and I heard that Revolut was coming, I would tell Revolut to find a partner in the ground, which is why I actually asked him that question. Because entering a heavily regulated market with many public and private banks, one would suggest that. I think there were a couple of people in the audience, including large conglomerates and family business groups, that had a raised eyebrow and may reach out to Felipe separately to be their partner. But that's how I would react. But I think Revolut could come to India and teach people what true digital banking is. I think that's a huge possibility.
Because it's not yet taken off in
India. No, but in India the regulations aren't out and there's all kinds of models and so on and so forth.
All right, let's come back to the Cedar-IBSi Capital Fund itself. How's that going? You've got publicly your first portfolio company. What's the next step?
Yeah, so our first portfolio company is called CogniQuest. They have a booth. They were here today. It's an intelligent document processing company founded by senior industry veterans, and they're off to the races. We're currently in the process of finalizing our second investment, again in a banking technology company. And as I said initially, that the whole funnel and pipeline and access to interesting companies is very, very strong, and we feel good about doing well in this new journey as a VC fund.
It's a case of watch this space. I won't press you on who the company is because you can't publicly announce it yet, what they do, but watch this space, I guess.
Yeah, I can say that they're in the space of lending technology. So technology that banks and lenders use to onboard borrowers. So that's the space they're in, and
so that's effectively almost a B2C investment, despite what you said earlier.
No, so it's more the technology, the software that is bought by a bank in order to be able to lend. It's not the actual lending that is done by this company. So it's still a SaaS software company. But yes, the use case is obviously to eventually have users who are onboarded thanks to this platform.